Stop nagging me about housework and work. It's annoying. Every time I ask something, my husband throws unkind words at me. I just wanted to walk through life together as a married couple. If it's like this, then what was the point of getting married? Just when I felt utterly hopeless, suddenly my husband's attitude changed. Maybe, just maybe, we could finally have the ideal married life I've been dreaming of. But I was fooling myself. I shouldn't have believed what he said. My name is Michelle Taylor. I'm 43. A few years ago, I met Edward while he was on a business trip, and now we live together. We were in a long-distance relationship, where we'd need to fly to see each other. Both of us were often too busy with work to meet, but after dating for a few years, we finally tied the knot. I'm gonna make you happy for the rest of our lives. I think I'll never forget the words of Edward's proposal. I never imagined I could marry such a wonderful man. Back then, he had a very friendly nature, and it seemed many women were attracted to him. It might sound bad, but I felt genuinely grateful that he chose me. Given the distance, I moved to his place and our married life began. But quitting my job was out of the question, so I transferred to another company. Why? Because Edward's earnings were way too low. Either the company didn't pay well, or Edward hadn't been promoted, I wasn't sure. But his salary was undeniably small. If I quit, we wouldn't be able to sustain our lives. At first, Edward wanted me to be a stay-at-home wife, but as reality set in, he stopped commenting on my job. Even now, years later, it remains the same. Together we worked to make ends meet. But then, something happened that greatly changed our lives. It was all because of Edward's behavior. He was so kind when we first got married, but as time went on, his true colors began to show. It started with such trivial matters. He wouldn't clear the dishes after eating. Hey, can you clear the table when you're done? Oh, yeah, sorry. He'd listen when I asked, but a few days later, he'd forget again. Can you take care of the dishes? Oh, yeah. We had discussed sharing household chores before marriage, but once married, Edward hardly ever did any. He always had an excuse. I thought maybe he was just tired, so I didn't nag him about chores. But to be honest, Edward finished work earlier than me, and it seemed like he had it easy. He even said his job was simple. On the other hand, my job was demanding and kept me busy almost every day. Putting up with Edward and juggling work with housework was quite a struggle. Couldn't he help out, just a little? I reached my limit and decided to have a serious talk with Edward. Hey, about the chores. Can you maybe help out a little more? I'm really tired. Suddenly, John's expression changed. You could tell at a glance that he was irritated. I get it, he said, anger evident in his voice. Although I didn't bring it up at the time, I couldn't help but wonder why he was so defensive. From that day on, John's behavior changed dramatically. I knew the reason. I had asked him to help with the household chores. Thinking about it now, maybe John just sees me as a convenient housemaid. One day, after finishing work as usual, I came home to the smell of alcohol permeating the room. Suppressing my disgust, I proceeded to the living room. Upon opening the door, I found John sprawled on the couch with a multitude of empty beer cans around him. I guessed he probably didn't go to work. Hey, what happened? Are you okay? Approaching my seemingly intoxicated husband, I asked. But John, opening his eyes that were shut, glared at me. You're so annoying, he snapped. Annoying? What? He responded with evident disdain and closed his eyes again. But seeing him this immersed in alcohol, I began to worry. Did he mentally break down without me noticing? Did he turn to alcohol as an escape? Hey, what's with all the booze? In response to my query, John opened his eyes and snapped. I told you, it's none of your business. But before I could argue further, John rose from the sofa and started yelling at me. Slurring his words, he hurled profanities and stormed off to his room. All I did was show concern. Why am I being treated this way? Alone in the living room, I spent some time in a daze before cleaning up the beer cans and snack wrappers that John had left around. Then one day, perhaps as a form of spite, laundry and dishes were purposely scattered around. Upon closer inspection, many dishes were broken, some of which were my favorites. Given our recent incident, I immediately knew John was responsible. I wanted to confront John about it, but he seemed to be out. Considering the time, he should have been done with work. Maybe he's out drinking? This meant he came home, trashed the place, and left. It's so malicious. I quickly dialed John's number. But he didn't answer. Sending him a text, I received an almost immediate reply. Maybe he thought a call would drag on. The message simply read, "I'm not coming home tonight." No mention of where he was or what he was doing. Oh my. What should I do? Should I just remain silent and comply with John's whims? Is all of this really my fault? The whole situation just feels so hopeless. I thought I did the right thing. I wondered, what should I have done differently? Lost in thought, I started cleaning up the mess in the room. Later on, I noticed the floor had been scratched. Every time I see that scratch, I'll be reminded of this day. The next day, as he had declared, John returned. His steps were unsteady and the scent of alcohol hung on his clothes. "Hey, what were you doing?" I was really worried, you know. My frustration evident, I confronted my husband, who hadn't even greeted me. He replied, "What I do is none of your business, is it? We're married, so of course it's my business." I was even more irritated by his attitude. Pressing him further, John gave me a vexed look and retreated to his room without a word. Oh dear. I let out an involuntary sigh. Did I really marry a man with such a difficult personality? Where did I go wrong? As I pondered these thoughts, tears began to flow uncontrollably. But I wouldn't give up. If I'm patient and continue to face my husband, maybe someday he'll understand how I feel. He might spend weekends with me or even help out with the household chores. I wouldn't ask for much. For now, I just want him to be in a good mood. With that hope, I kept trying to engage John in conversation. "How was work today? Tough day? Oh, and dinner is meat and potatoes tonight." But his reactions weren't positive. Ignoring me became the norm. He'd often click his tongue and give me annoyed glances. Our marital bond, which I once tried to mend, seemed impossible to fix with John behaving this way. Lately, he wouldn't even touch the meals I prepared. Sooner or later, I started to reconsider our relationship. Should we continue being married like this? Would it be better if I just let him be? The more I thought, the more negative I became. I decided to make one last plea to John. "Please, just don't ignore me when I speak to you." To my surprise, it seemed like my feelings reached him as he suddenly apologized. I'm sorry." I was taken aback. I never expected John to apologize. Then he added, "From now on, I'll help out with the housework too." "Really?" "Yeah. I've been quite inconsiderate till now." Saying that, he gently patted my head. It felt like it had been years. If I thought about it rationally, his sudden change of heart seemed suspicious. Given his past behavior, it's only natural to be skeptical. But I wanted to believe that John had finally turned over a new leaf, and I got carried away. Afterwards, he truly started to help around the house. Laundry, cooking, cleaning, sometimes everything was done before I got home. I never thought John could cook. I sat down in front of my beaming husband and we shared our meals together. He also began to put more effort into his job. Previously, he never did overtime, but now he mentioned studying for certifications and often stayed late at work. "How's work going lately?" "It's going well," John replied with a smile. Our time together increased, and it felt like the honeymoon phase all over again. But there was one thing that bothered me. Even though he claimed to be doing overtime, there was no overtime pay. Considering John never did overtime before, it was puzzling. Was his company exploiting him? "Hey, aren't you getting paid for overtime?" When I asked him that, he replied, "Oh, it's overtime for independent study. I didn't put in a request for it." "Oh, really?" Considering the financial aspect, I'd like him to claim his overtime pay. Maybe Bob feels a bit hesitant about it. I don't know anything about Bob's company, so I'm not in a position to comment. For now, I decided to go along with Bob's thinking. But later on, The day would come when I regretted genuinely accepting the changes in Bob. One day, my business trip was confirmed. I've been away from home for work before, but this time, it's for a whole week. With excitement, feelings of anxiety and loneliness also grew. When I told Bob about the trip, his reaction was unexpected. A business trip? How many days? Usually, when I mention business trips, he doesn't seem very interested and never asks how long I'd be away. But this time, he showed interest in my job and even asked about the duration. It seems Bob is genuinely trying to prioritize our home life. With that thought, I felt glad I married this man. I think it's gonna be a week from the week after next. Oh, okay. The week after next then. Saying that, Bob started checking his calendar on his smartphone. I'm not sure about the details, but it's clear that he's busier than before. I wondered if he's become busier at work or perhaps more relied upon. Got it. Be careful, okay? Yeah, thanks. We exchanged such conversations. And on the morning of the day of the trip, I explained various household things to Bob, thinking he had finally come around. I told him about the discount store, how to iron, and where certain daily necessities are kept so he wouldn't have any trouble. Well, I'm off now. Call me if anything comes up. All right. Thank you. Saying that, I headed for my business trip. That evening, when I returned to my hotel after work, there was an unusual message from Bob. How's work going? It's going well. After some casual chit-chat, I sent him a goodnight message and put my phone down. I wondered if everything was all right with Bob. Is he feeling lonely all by himself? With such thoughts, I continued preparing for my work. About a week later, I finished my work and was heading home. Luckily, I finished a day earlier than planned. If no last-minute work comes up, I'll have tomorrow off. Feeling happy on my way back, I thought of cooking dinner and stopped by the supermarket. What should I cook? Curry, stew. Then I remembered we might be out of oil. And at the same time, I realized I hadn't told Bob I was coming home. Would he be surprised if I just showed up? I texted Bob to check if we had oil at home and to inform him that my business trip had ended early and I was on my way home. However, even after circling the supermarket, there was no reply from Bob. Was he working? Was he still doing overtime? I decided not to disturb Bob further and picked up a bottle of oil, thinking it's always good to have some extra. After shopping, I was on my way home when Bob called. Hey, are you coming home now? Where are you? For some reason, Bob sounded panicked. Was something wrong? Yeah. I'm in the apartment elevator right now. Upon hearing that, Bob hung up the phone without saying anything else. What on earth is happening? Worried about Bob, I hurried to our apartment. I'm home. Edward. You okay? I call out, but there's no answer. Edward. Just as I'm taking off my shoes and heading inside, my husband comes rushing out of the living room and collapses right in front of me. Are you okay? It's hard to breathe. Call an ambulance. Saying this, he grabs my hand. I quickly pull out my cell and call 911. Within minutes, the ambulance arrives. I let the paramedics into the house, and they check on my husband. Is he going to be all right? What's going to happen to him? While I'm watching and worrying, I notice something odd. There are a pair of women's shoes I don't recognize. Obviously, they aren't the paramedics' shoes. Not mine either. I suddenly feel a tightness in my chest. Then, glancing at the living room window, I see women's lingerie hanging there. Could it be, is Edward having an affair? Thinking back, he did seem awfully panicked when I called. Maybe he was trying to hide his affair? I cautiously look around the house, pretending to prepare for my husband's hospital visit so as not to arouse suspicion. Living room, restroom, kitchen. But, there's no sign of her. If those shoes are here, she must be around unless she escaped through a window. Finally, when I check the bathroom, I see a light on and a silhouette. I open the door and look at the bathtub. I can't believe what's in front of me. I wanted to turn away. I wish I had been mistaken. About the shoes and the lingerie. I head back to the front door. The conversation with the paramedics goes like this. You're his family, right? Please come with us. I'm sorry, there's been a mistake. Excuse me? The paramedics sound shocked. Edward, too, lets out a surprised sound. Ignoring them, I bring the woman from the bathroom to the front door. This woman is family. She'll come with us. Wait a minute. As I say this, the woman gets flustered. Edward seems shocked too, and suddenly sits up with force. You. The paramedics quickly try to calm down the agitated Edward. But honestly, I think this guy's fine. What do you think? Well, he doesn't seem to be in any critical condition. In the end, it's decided that Edward doesn't need immediate medical attention, but if he feels unwell again, he should go to the hospital. The room becomes silent after the paramedics leave. So, what's going on here? I sit both Edward and the woman down and demand an explanation. At first, both of them look uncomfortable and remain silent, but as I continue to stare silently, they seem to give in. Edward starts speaking. I'm sorry for the misunderstanding. She's a colleague from work. We're close, but there's nothing going on. After Edward, the colleague speaks up. That's right. We were just having a meeting here. There's nothing going on, I promise. Now you tell me this? Do you need to take a bath for the meeting? Do you need to dry your underwear too? What's going on? I said, pointing to the underwear hanging in the living room. The two of them exchanged glances, looking like they were in trouble. I knew all about it. If you have time to think of a weird excuse, just tell me the truth. As I pressed them, my husband, Edward, looked up to the heavens and spilled everything. I'm really sorry. It's not just about being sorry. So, you've been lying about working late? It seems Edward had a special relationship with his junior, Kate, after we got married. The reason he started cheating was because I kept nagging him to do the household chores. But after Kate told him a man who can do household chores is so cool, he decided to give it a try. And suddenly he was working late because he wanted to meet Kate. I didn't miss the smug look on Kate's face. That's why there was no overtime pay. He wasn't even trying to get any certifications. It was all just talk. I get what you're thinking. Let's just get a divorce. Please, go ahead and be with her. I was so fed up that I proposed a divorce. It wasn't a threat or anything. The fact that I'd been deceived all this time was just unbearable. But Edward wouldn't listen. A divorce? That's not the right move. He said things like that. Things like, if you'd told me you were coming home, this wouldn't have happened. Yeah, it's not fair to come home unannounced. That's what they both started saying. Had I been fooled by my husband's act for so long? The thought made me feel so pathetic. Ma'am, look. Edward really seems to be regretting it, said Kate, trying desperately to calm me down. You don't really not want to get divorced, do you? You're just blaming me for the reason you cheated, aren't ya? Enough is enough. Let's get a divorce. No, that's not it. When I looked at Kate, she quickly looked away, seeming uncomfortable. Kate's pouting too. You two should live happily together. Pouting? I'm not. Kate tried to retort, but I cut her off, saying, You're clearly pouting. This made Kate purse her lips even more. Look, she seems to regret it too. Shut up. It's too late for any excuses. I won't forgive you. I shouted, and the two of them shrunk back. I hope they reflect on what they've done. And the things they've said. After that, I hired a lawyer and began preparations to file for divorce and claim a share of the assets. Edward kept calling me the whole time. And to top it all off, I even got a call from his parents. They were understanding, and when I told them everything Edward had done to me, they apologized and agreed to help with the divorce. Eventually, they must have spoken to Edward because during the divorce proceedings, a very tired-looking Edward agreed to the divorce without any fuss. I reported Edward and Kate's affair to their company. After the divorce, John and Kate, given they worked at the same company, quickly got caught having an affair. The two of them were given the cold shoulder by their colleagues and seemed to have lost their place at the company. On top of that, they became the gossip target of the chatty older women, and before they knew it, even clients were talking about it. Unable to stand such an environment, the two of them quit their jobs. I'm not sure if they're married, but they must be strapped for cash. If they did get married, I can easily picture them having disputes over money. I moved to a new apartment right away. The place I live in now is way more comfortable than before, and it's cheaper. Come to think of it, I remember choosing that old place based on John's preferences. When I get home, a sigh of relief escapes me, thankful that that chapter of my life is finally over. All right. Since the divorce, I've been more focused on my work, and my performance has significantly improved. Thanks to that, I got a raise. I thought I might have decided on the divorce in a fit of anger, but now that it's all over, I feel elated. Feels like a weight's been lifted. With that thought, I savor my favorite tea, gearing up for what tomorrow brings.